What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Movie Emporiums. I'm doing my actual review for this movie, but welcome to Movie Emporium's movie review of course, Crimes of the Future. This is a spoiler-filled review. This is a review that is going to have a lot of things talked about in this movie. If you want to see David Cronenberg's Crimes of the Future, definitely watch it before seeing this review. As always, if you like what you see on this channel, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell at the top to find out what's coming in next. If you like this video, awesome. Hit that like button, as well as commenting below on any video to watch, including this one. Okay, so Crimes of the Future is David Cronenberg's newest film. It's a film that I've been highly anticipating since I actually remember that he was doing another film. It's been 8 years since his last film, which was Maps to the Stars or something like that, which was also a really terrible film. As I always do, for the most part, if I can, I want to talk about movies, especially movies like this, with people that, you know, either love David Cronenberg or love this type of movie or love movies in general like this. And it just so happens that Jacob, who is of course part of the Fifth Dimension, who does the podcast with me, loves David Cronenberg. We were going to try and get Triv, who was also part of the podcast, to come on, but she unfortunately was busy. But of course I brought Jacob along. What's going on, Jacob? How you doing?
I'm nonsense? Doing pretty good. I was.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Like, you and I didn't even realize. I feel like sometimes like I'm the only one that likes like these really kind of crazy movies, like, you know, David Cronenberg, or I don't know, Gaspar Noé or something like that. You know, these really offbeat, really strange mind odyssey films. This is a movie that is, quote unquote, I thought, and I'm sure I know you thought as well, that it was going to be a body horror film, especially from the trailer. So I have to ask. Yeah, exactly. It's been forever since, I don't know, Existence, maybe in 1999, since he's done an actual true body horror film. If you don't know anything about David Cronenberg, he did like The Fly and Shivers and Dead Ringers and of course Scanners. And body horror is like using the actual physical form of a human being to kind of do expressionism and stuff like that, go into really kind of strange odyssey territory where you manipulate the body in certain ways, and you do certain things, like, if for instance Videodrome with the what kind of gun was that? It was like the gun that James would, it was like, yeah, it was like the flesh gun or something like that.
Yeah.
So but he likes to deal with like humanistic feelings and the way our kind of how we like to move in the world and stuff like that. He's a really strange director, and his son also did another body horror film, which was Possessor, which we both liked. But I guess the real question going into this, you know, you have your review out already. This is my official review, but when you saw this trailer for this film, how excited were you that he was finally going back to his place in the world that is his filmmaking?
Well, like you said, I'm a David Cronenberg fan, and not just of his body horror stuff, but let's be real, that's what he's known for. He has actually made plenty of other movies that aren't body horror, but he is kind of I'm not going to say he was the first, but he is somewhat considered like the granddaddy of body horror. He does it best, and his best is like you mentioned, The Fly, Videodrome, Existence, even to an extent. Mm-hmm. And they sold this movie because I covered a story when they first announced it, not the trailer, but a year and change ago, when they first announced, hey, David Cronenberg, Viggo Mortensen are getting back together. Not only are they getting back together, but David Cronenberg is going back to sci-fi and body horror. Their words. They told us going back to body horror. I was like, fuck yeah! I was like really excited about that. So right. Yeah, when the trailer came out, the trailer to this movie is very ambiguous. I mean, it don't tell you much. It more maybe sets a tone, which is fine. That's what a good trailer will do. That doesn't give anything away. It just kind of sets the tone for the film, gives you an idea, gives you an idea of the look. I was fine with that. I had no idea what it was about. I do David Cronenberg body horror. That's all I needed to know. So yeah, I was really excited upon walking into the theater and driving the hour and 45 minutes to get there.
That's the thing. That's when you know you're committed, when you're willing to drive an hour and 45 fucking minutes to a theater to see a movie that of a director you truly love. I did trailer reacts for both trailers. They released one that was, you know, a very small teaser. It showed a little bit. It showed like Viggo Mortensen in that weird chair where he's like eating food or whatever, and then they showed him in like the sarcophagus or whatever the fuck that thing is. It says it in the Wikipedia page, but I'm not even gonna bother looking for it.
Is it the Stark or the Stark? I think it's called Stark. That machine, that weird machine he lays. I can't remember.
Yeah, it's who the fuck knows. It's that weird chair of some sort. But then this movie was premiering at Cannes Film Festival, and then they released the official trailer. And I also want to thank Neon for allowing me to see this movie, giving me tickets to see it. So I appreciate them doing that. But I was amped for this movie. It actually got pretty decent. I mean, Cannes is a little, what do I call, strange when it comes to festivals, because they
Very art house
give
leaning.
award they give awards to films that are, as you just said, and sometimes those films aren't good. Elephant was a great example of that, the Gus Van Sant movie. And so I heard this movie is great, and I heard it was, people were gonna, David Cronenberg's like, yeah, even Kristen Stewart's like, if people walk out of it, that's cool. It's not meant for everyone. It's a David Cronenberg film, so it's very visually arresting and graphic and stuff like that. So I was like, yes, I'm gonna go see this movie. And I will say this, it is very much a David Cronenberg film. It very much has the feel, the chair, the body parts, the device they use to cut open the different characters in this movie. They're all very, what do I call, fleshy, humanistic feeling creatures that have life to them. Yeah, very squishy. Yeah, it's like you hear the water gooey and stuff like that.
Well, to what she said about people walking out, I think what she's referring to is because, like I said, the body horror aspect is what everybody was thinking of. You think of that immediately when you hear the Cronenberg name, and his son made good on that, by the way, a few years ago. Possessor. What? Once again, wasn't a body horror movie, but it had body horror aspects to it, and I thought that movie was fantastic. But and I'd be okay. We're going to talk about it specifically. I'd be okay with this movie not being the horror aspect of the body horror. Didn't necessarily need to be there, but of course, since they built it that, I was expecting some of that visceral, just kind of like very uncomfortable kind of stuff that he's known for. It didn't necessarily need to be a horror, but I just wanted to see some horror moments or body horror moments. But in regards to what she said of people walking out, I can definitely see that some people walking out of this movie for sure, but I just don't think it's going to be for the reasons that she's probably alluding to.
Yeah, it's the thing about David Cronenberg is The Fly and Existence to an extent. They're horror films. I guess you could maybe I don't think Dead Ringers is a true horror film. I know the Dead Zone's a horror film, but I think Videodrome is more just sci-fi weirdness than it is horror. But
it's like Existence. It's not horror per se, but it has that body, fleshy, that uncomfortable. And that's what he would take these very organic like devices that, even though they don't look like human beings' body parts, there's something very organic about them, and it makes us feel uncomfortable. And of course, some of the mutilations that is done to the human body in his movies are very graphic depictions of that. Even when, like those two movies, Videodrome and Existence, not horrors per se, but they definitely have, kind of like Possessor, they have horror elements here or there. And the body horror part is definitely on display.
Right. But so first of all, don't go into this movie tired, because you will not enjoy it that much. But
don't go in full awake.
Yeah, exactly. Don't drive an hour and 45 minutes also to see this movie. Just, if you have it close to your theater, go see it like at your local theater. But with that said, I was excited. I went to the theater, then the movie started, and then I kept looking at my watch and my phone, and then I kept starting to fall asleep. And I wasn't falling asleep to the point where I wasn't like paying attention to the movie. But this movie has a problem, and this movie is, as you put it, is pretentious. It is a movie up its own ass. And some people like that. And I know David Cronenberg is very pretentious in what he says and what he directs, and what, his movies are pretentious a little bit. But my God, even if you love David Cronenberg and you understand the concepts and ideas, what he's presenting, this movie is very difficult to follow. It's like several different stories that never seem to want to connect with one another, which is a problem. And
the very, very end.
Yeah, exactly. And that opening is one of the most, like, I was like, what the fuck is going on? I thought this was a movie about, Viggo Mortensen being, cut up in a chair, but it's fucking, I'll just say it right now, it's about a woman, and apparently Scott Speedman is in this movie, is playing the father.
Yeah.
But this kid, yeah, exactly.
His cruise ship got back from Speed too. That's the cruise ship in the background of the movie in the beginning.
Oh God. Oh my God. But I get it where it gets to the end. I started as you talk about it, but it starts out with a mother, and the mother tells her son not to eat whatever's in the ocean, and then he starts eating a trash can, and I'm like, okay, what the fuck is what? Okay, sure. We still have an hour and 45 minutes to go in this movie. Okay,
The
and it
funny
just
thing
doesn't
is you're
get it.
not being funny. It's funny just hearing that, but that is
Yeah,
like literally word for word and not in a
he
comedy
eats the
sense
trash can.
exactly what's going on. The kid just starts eating a trash can, and this is a serious moment.
Yeah,
But
and the
please
kid,
continue.
and the mother murders him, and I didn't know what to think. I honestly, this is my honest and truthful opinion. I wasn't understanding the whole point of having the kid in the movie. I know it has something to do with the detective, and you find out, as we talk about Viggo Mortensen, I think he's a informant of some sort. I don't fucking know
No, he
what
well,
the
I mean,
hell is
we'll
this
get
movie
to
even
that.
about.
It's about, I mean, it's got a lot of subtext,
I
and that
know.
was one of the problems of the movie. They're trying to say things. He's trying to comment on things in society.
Yeah,
Fine, no problem. But they go about it in such a roundabout way. They go so far out there to make these social, I mean, I don't know, to make these points and to like say, have a message that it loses you before you can get to the point of the message. But I mean, as far as the story is concerned, the kid, a lot of it's about evolution, accepting
yeah.
our fate, accepting what we're becoming, and all this and that, and also fighting against it. Viggo Mortensen's character, his whole thing is he's been fighting against what's natural, what his natural evolution the whole time, and it's about acceptance. The kid is supposed to be the embodiment of, even though he's called a monster and all that, he's pure. He naturally
Right.
became this thing that we're going to talk about in a few minutes. And the government, which of course includes, and I know people that haven't seen the movie and they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? But the government, which includes this police force, the vice or new vice or whatever, I
I
can't
don't
remember what
know.
they call it, but
Yeah, I completely
the guy
forgot
with the
what it
thing on
even
his
was.
abdomen.
Yeah.
But they, of course, are controlled by the government. The government wants to control this and is afraid of what we are becoming. So they
So
don't want people to know that this can naturally occur, this thing that this kid is. So, it ties into the end why they changed some of that out. And yeah, Viggo Mortensen does, he's not at first, but he does end up working for them because he's
yeah.
kind of on board with what they stand for, because he's afraid of it. He feels like these things he grows and has taken out are unnatural, so has them removed. But then of course when he finally accepts it in the end, I don't know, I guess the ending can be interpreted a bunch of different ways, but the way I took it, he finally accepts who he is, and then
Mm.
it gets bliss. But getting ahead of ourselves, I suppose.
No, I mean, he like as soon as that happens, we're introduced to the most David Cronenberg way to do a David Cronenberg film, which is in the chair, things attached to him that are very much. I
That's his
actually, believe
bed,
it or not,
his in his
yeah,
bed.
exactly. I thought he was having dream. I thought it was like he was having dreams of like something that he saw in the past or something like that. It was really confusing, but
Like his childhood or
he,
something. Yeah.
yeah, something like that. Maybe they brought him back to life. I don't know. But what we find out basically in this movie is he and Leah Seydoux's character, who is she's not really his wife. She's more of like his partner, sexual partner, friends with benefits or whatever. And they basically are one of the most well known performance acts in the world. Everybody knows who they are. They're very famous. Apparently, Viggo Mortensen's character can grow body part, or not body parts, but internal organs.
Organs,
And
all
they,
new
yeah,
organs
and
that
they,
don't have any
yeah,
real function.
right, right. And I guess they just cut him open. And the way people heal in this movie is kind of weird, but they open him up, and that's how they perform. And they're very famous. Everybody talks to him like, "Oh my God, blah blah blah." Character Viggo Mortensen plays. I love you. I love what you do. And it's just, I understand the whole idea of like a world where it's very much like a reality TV special in a lot of ways, where, or you could think of like Running Man or something like that, where these people just love the idea of a very sickening idea, and that's why they're so popular, and they're removing organs and stuff like that. But it was just, as much as I understand that kind of stuff, it felt like going in, it didn't really have any purpose or idea. It felt like David Cronenberg had all these ideas and just didn't know where he wanted to go. And then when he decided where he wanted to go, it just didn't really feel complete. It doesn't feel like a very complete movie, I guess is my easiest put.
I mentioned in my review that the world that this movie takes place in, that they created, is interesting. I can't say it's good or bad. It's interesting. And there are some things in it that I do like. And I just didn't feel like it was fleshed out as much as I would have liked. Now, I understand David Cronenberg and his artistic side, and a lot of these types of movies, they like to leave some things vague because they look at it as that's not the point. The point of the movie is not that. The point of the movie is this. And I get that, but I wish they had fleshed out this world more, like where illness and pain is all, but I get that we feel it, but mostly when you're asleep because it's attached to sleep, and there's not much pain you feel while you're awake, at least. And some people don't even feel it when they're asleep. We've evolved beyond pain, and illness is all but eradicated. And in a world where that happens, what would people do? Well, in the David Cronenberg world, they start cutting on themselves. But I could honestly see something like that. If there's no pain and there's no illness, so there's no repercussion for mutilating yourself in some way, definitely there would be people that would be modifying, doing things to their bodies because it doesn't hurt. There's no drawback to it. It's not going to kill you. So I'm like, yeah, okay, I could see that. And I mean, I'd be interested to see where that would go. Would people be removing organs from their bodies and putting them on display? Yeah, sure. There's weirder shit that has happened in the real world. But the world just, why? I mean, they just say it's evolution. Why did we suddenly just not have pain receptors? Why is illness just suddenly gone away? This does not present itself as like the far future. It never really says, but I take this as relative near future. It's not like the year 5000 or something. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's that far removed from now. But the world could have been good. And I'm not saying it's bad. It's just, there's not enough there. It doesn't give me enough. They give you just the basics. Now, I understand, like I said, I know they're just trying to say, well, we want to give you just enough so we can get to the point. But sometimes to make that point mean more, you need to give me a little bit more to understand and really get invested in the world. And I didn't feel like they totally gave us that.
That's
either that or don't give a shit and just roll with it. And then have people be like, what? Okay, so people just, what's going on? But if you're going to give me some explanation, you got to give me enough to get me invested. And I don't feel like they did that properly.
Well, that's the other problem, and I'm going to throw this out there. This movie has a lot of characters that are very hard to understand what they're saying unless you have subtitles. So I don't know if you feel it the same way, but like when Viggo Mortensen talks, and he's not known for being a very high volume speaker. He is very low key. He does what Harrison Ford does when he's like basically not acting, where he's very quiet in his talk. And maybe I was tired and I just wasn't focused as well, but I felt that the way some of the people talk in this movie, it allows the movie to just not have a purpose on its explanation, because he's definitely throwing stuff out there that does help to move the plot along, but it felt like some of the characters just were mumbling through the entire movie. And maybe, like I said, that could be me. Maybe I need to get my ears cleaned. I don't know, but did you feel that as well, or is it just me?
Yeah, I heard what they were saying. I think what it's a little bit of that. Viggo Mortensen does pretty much everything. He always talks like he's very soft spoken, and that's just his thing. And I'm cool with that. I think one of the things that contributed to that is, and this is something I liked and disliked about the movie, and it ties into what I said a second ago. The movie just throws shit out there. It's exposition is not something that's in this movie, like at all. And I understand
that's actually kind of a David Cronenberg thing, isn't it? Does he?
Yeah. And I like that. But if you're, like I said, if you're gonna do that, you have to have some way of letting people in the door, or we just don't understand what you're talking about. I mean, and I like when directors and writers find creative ways to expose information to us, because you have to get the information to the audience for them to understand what's going on in some way, even if it's after the fact. And you like, they say something, you're like, what are they talking about? And then 10 minutes later, you gain information somehow, and you're like, oh, that makes sense. I like those kind of movies. I like the movies that keep you engaged and make you think. Didn't do that. It did the first part. They will be talking about things that make no sense to us. The words they're using, I mean, we understand the words, but there's no context. And we're like, I don't understand what that is. And you're expecting, okay, but something's going to come up in a few minutes that'll bring it to light. But it never does. I mean, there's some things, but a lot of the stuff just there's never, and like I said, I don't need someone to come on screen and be like, this is what that means, or have like an exposition dump, but they should have interactions with others or something that conveys to us, the audience, of, hey, that thing we were talking about a few minutes ago, give you some context, even if you got to think about it and figure it out in your head. And there is some stuff that you can figure out, but man, it is just difficult. This movie is unnecessarily difficult to get your head around. And I don't mind a movie that makes you think, but it's like it goes out of its way to be obscure and difficult. And some people say, well, that's just artistic. No, that's just difficult. That's not good storytelling. When you can be artistic and out there and all that and still have good storytelling. Look at his son. I'm going to refer to or reference Brandon Cronenberg's Possessor a lot, because they are very much alike in their directing style. And he told a very interesting, detailed, on the surface, hard to understand story with Possessor, but did a fantastic job doing it. And it was very rare that we just got exposition dumps. He did it right. Here, Pappy Cronenberg did not do it right. It's just, there's too much information that's given to us, and we don't understand. It just doesn't we don't fully understand it.
I think the biggest sin of this movie is the organ registration stuff, and on top of the Scott Speedman stuff, which I don't even understand. I don't get why that. I understand what I understand what you're saying, but like I don't get it. But you have Kristen Stewart in here, who's coming off an Oscar nomination. She is a fantastic actress, as we've seen. She's been in a lot of great stuff recently, and I understand why she did this movie, because she's an actress that wants to like express who she is good at what she does. But her character is literally somebody who's a fan of Viggo Mortensen's character, and she wants to have him operate on her and stuff like that. But she's, one, barely in the movie, which was really disappointing. Two, I really feel like her performance was just so off kilter and so weird and bonkers and just in a different movie that I just didn't understand the point to her character. Her boss, fine, he's good. I can't remember who the actor who plays him. I know him, but I can't remember who he plays. But for a third lead actor in a movie that is Kristen Stewart, and you don't feel anything out of her character, and the same thing with Scott Speedman, you just... here's what I wish they would have done. The movie is about performance actors who love cutting each other open, the whole thing. They should have just mainly focused on that, maybe done kind of like a Nightmare Alley in a lot of aspects, where you have these two individuals who are doing this blah 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 blah. It really focuses on that. You have some individuals like Cate Blanchett's character comes in for a few minutes, stuff like that. But here, when they throw in people like Kristen Stewart, and she's supposed to be like a main character through the movie, and she doesn't do anything or really represent anything interesting about the movie, maybe they think differently. That's where my problems lie in. You're throwing all, like you said, throwing all this stuff at the wall, and it's just, they keep falling off the wall because they're not sticking. And I feel like, if you're going to present a world, and then on top of that, this movie's about climate change, apparently, which I didn't realize. But if you're presenting all these ideas and theories and representations, it's just, you're not doing a very good job of it. And coming especially from somebody like David Cronenberg, who is a master in what he does, it just feels like, once again, like Cosmopolis or, Maps of the Stars, maybe he's just up his own ass. I don't know. Like I said, I really was really disappointed by her.
I love David Cronenberg, but he's definitely up his own ass. And I definitely expected that going into the movie, but I was okay with it, because the guy's given us some greats. And even when he's up his own ass, he can still give us a great story or a great experience. This just wasn't it. With Kristen Stewart, I'm with you. I think Kristen Stewart, much like Robert Pattinson, got a bad rap with like Twilight movies. They were young and they were doing what they had to do in that industry. That's cool.
Yeah.
So movies weren't good. They weren't good in those movies, but that's become like their identity. Yeah. And they're working against that identity. I think she's a great actress. And it's funny you say that, because She was my favorite performance in the movie. Not
Really?
that I don't think anybody did terrible in the movie or anything, but hers with her little quirks and everything. She wasn't in the movie
Yeah.
much, like you said. Every time she came on screen, I enjoyed her so much. Not necessarily the character. I didn't necessarily enjoy the character because she kind of
Oh yeah,
her
she always
character's like
tries in the
everybody
movie.
else.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
just like whatever. But just the performance, how she added all these little like and all that kind of stuff that was clearly intentional. It made her character stand out. And I liked that. If nothing else, it was just while I was bored out of my fucking mind watching this movie, someone came on and was being entertaining in some way, something different. And I was like, oh, she's being just really fucking out there, man. Because she is. Her character's just like kind of out there for out
I
there.
do gotta
So
give her points.
as soon as it shows her in the background just going doing all this. I mean, I was like, what the fuck is she doing? She's at least entertaining.
No, I'll say I do give her points for French kissing Viggo Mortensen. I bet that was a interesting time at the theater, or interesting time. There's a lot of French kissing Viggo Mortensen in this movie.
All kinds of parts of him. But
right.
But what you said a second ago, it's apparently about climate change and what we're doing to the earth and all that, the whole plastic thing that we'll get to. They never fully committed to any of that. Like the whole plastic thing that we're gonna get to, but just to touch on it, I feel like a lot of I did get the movie, and I took from that some, obviously plastic's not good for our environment and all that.
Yeah.
So hey, here's something we can do with it on a basic level. But it just doesn't fully commit to it's like, hey, we've got a message, and okay, here's the part finally where we're going to convey that message to you. They just don't fully commit to it. They don't fully commit to here's the message. Now, I don't want to ram in a message down my throat, but if you're going to have a pretentious ass movie that's going to have all these underlying messages about this, that, or the other, just go all in. Just give us the fucking message. So at least then at the end, we can say, oh, well, it was this, and not have to sit there and like disseminate every single little aspect of this movie we didn't enjoy to try and figure out what the fuck it was about.
Yeah. I mean, I can't not say that the performances weren't that bad, weren't great. I mean, they're good. I really like Léa Seydoux, especially every inch of her, but no, I'm kidding.
They're off kilter.
Léa Seydoux, yeah.
But they're good. I mean, they are very David Cronenberg performances, but that's intentional. They are good. The performers, I didn't feel like were doing a bad job. And I mean, the performances, they're kind of weird, but that's what we expect. And they all did good with that. Well, that's what I thought.
Yeah. But the thing I will definitely say that I enjoyed about this movie, the visual experience about this movie, I will say this right now. This movie is nowhere near as graphic as a lot of David Cronenberg's films are. I think The Fly is a perfect example of something that will make people leave the audience and leave the theater. But this movie while it's disturbing and graphic, I never once felt queasy. I never once felt like I needed to leave the theater, which I'm, I watch a lot of crazy stuff anyways, but when they're like cutting open Viggo Mortensen, or they're, naked on the bed, him and Léa Seydoux are naked on the bed, and they're just knives are cutting them and stuff like that. Or, the two apparently assassin chicks, which I didn't know what was drilling there. Yeah, drilling people in the back of the head, which
I think they worked for the. I think that they
worked for the government or something like that.
Yeah, all these people worked for the government. It's just to interject real quick. You said like, oh, people getting sick. So I'm sitting there in this theater, and I noticed something just from my personal experience. Whenever I go to the theater, I always get popcorn, Twizzlers, drinks, and stuff like that.
Right.
I hadn't eaten dinner yesterday, so I was like, that was essentially my dinner before I got home because I had such a long drive.
Yeah.
So I get there, and I've got like this large popcorn, this big, huge thing of like Twizzlers, this drink and everything. I walk into this theater that there were actually more people. It was a little bit early. It was a day early screening. I didn't expect. I was like, maybe like one or two people in here or something like that. It wasn't a packed theater, but there were more people in there for an early screening to Crimes of the Future than I expected. In Alabama. So, but yeah, there were. It was a half capacity, which I was like, okay, well, there's a decent amount of people here. Cool. Nobody had any concessions. I didn't really think about it, except me. I'm sitting there with this big fucking popcorn and all this and that, and I'm like, hush. And I started thinking, I was like, ooh, this is a David Cronenberg movie. And it's his glorious return to body horror. I was like, oh man, I wonder if that's why nobody's got anything. I'm the one asshole in here just like eating all this food when I'm probably about to see something absolutely disgusting. But yeah, man, I ate every last fucking bit of that shit, and never once was I. Which I mean, I have a strong stomach anyway, but there wasn't anything that really pushed any boundaries, I thought, as far as like straight up body horror goes.
I mean, hell, the back of your screen there, those are probably the two most disturbing things in the movie. The guy getting his mouth closed and the ears, which, you know, appendages I'm fine with, I guess. You know, there is a South Park episode where a mouse gets a talking penis growing on it and stuff like that. And, you know, that type of stuff. But it was like the ear guy and then the woman to the left of the screen, you know.
It visually, I mean, it was interesting. Like this ear guy that's behind me and the woman and all that. Like from a visual standpoint, just seeing the pictures, you kind of go, "Oh, what is that?" It's very Brazil-esque, and but I mean, in when you sit down and watch it, it's just kind of like, okay, there's nothing disturbing about it. There's nothing uncomfortable, and that's what body horror is. Body horror is not just violence; it is like visceral.
There's like a sexual nature to it.
I will go back to either his older stuff like The Fly, Videodrome, and I keep going to those two, but even Existence and Brandon Cronenberg's Possessor. There were things that happened in that movie that were so just in your face and you don't typically see. They made you uncomfortable. That whole scene in Possessor where he goes to the house and enacts what he's there to do for his mission. That whole thing was just like, and I don't have a weak stomach, but there were parts I kind of would have to be like, oh, all right, that's Let me look over here for a second. That's rough. That's uncomfortable. And that's what body horror is. It's supposed to, because it's supposed to be done to a body, our most sacred thing. And you see these things and they're supposed to just make you feel like, oh no, I don't like that. That's too much. And there was none of that here.
I mean, hell, The Boys did stuff that was The Boys season 3 did stuff 10 times worse than what this movie did. Which I understand if people can't. I understand if people can't handle this kind of stuff. It's fine. It's not, like he says, it's not a movie that's meant for everyone. But I never felt like it was tempting. I mean, I don't know. I think maybe I'm desensitized to ultra violence or something like that. I don't know, but
there's that. You said it right there. It's not for everyone. And I get that. I mean, I did not like this movie. I didn't expect David Cronenberg. No, I didn't like it either. Yeah. But I go into it and I did not like this movie. If you didn't guess. But I fully understand if you did like it, if someone did like the movie, because I had, like you said, leading up to it, I heard like, oh, it's all great in this. There were some complaints, but it was more leaning positively, which had me even more excited. I didn't watch any specifics because I wanted to see the movie myself, but just the general feel I was getting is that, hey, people are positively leaning for this movie. Yeah. So I get it. The movie just wasn't for me, and that's fine. And if it was for someone, that's fine. But just like, because I know I am, at least, I'm going to get critiques with my views because I was very honest, and I am here, and with my review of it, how I didn't like it and what I didn't like about it. There's definitely going to be people that it is for, and I feel like some of those people are not going to have that same, oh, well, it just wasn't for you. I get why you didn't like it. I did. No, it's going to be, you're stupid. You don't understand it. You didn't did it. Let me get some straight. I understood this movie from beginning to end. Yeah. I understood what it was saying, what was going on with it. I just didn't give a fuck because it was boring as shit. It was not for me. If it was for you, great. But that's my opinion. And I mean, I'm due to that just like people that like it are due to their opinion.
Yeah, I mean, a prime example is the two ladies. So I'm assuming they were like operational technicians on whatever chair or what. Yeah, techs. But then it goes into like some territory where they just start murdering people, and then you have to admit you start laughing when that really bad version dummy of Scott Speedman's character. They're joining into. Yeah, I'm like, that looks like something out of the original Terminator movie. It was really poor. You could tell it was a dummy that they were drilling into. And
Scott Speedman just looked like Bradley Cooper to me in this movie.
Does it?
Every time I saw him, I was like, who is that Bradley Cooper? No, it's Scott Speedman.
Wouldn't be surprised if he was in this movie. But that's what you were talking about earlier. And we'll talk about that real quick. The plastic, it looks like I don't know if you've seen Snowpiercer, but it looks like the key from
Yes,
Snowpiercer.
that's what I thought.
Yeah,
The
and
nutrition bars.
right, and and that's what I was having a problem with Scott Speedman's character. I'm like, what the fuck? Okay, he's child. He's going to give the child to have, like you were talking about earlier, to because it's more natural and stuff like that. What the fuck was up with it? Is it plastic bars? Are they just to represent a different form of food that they can eat? Like, he's known for, David Cronenberg's known for having weird food and shit. I mean, look at Naked Lunch and stuff like that. But I never really kind of grasped the idea of what these plastic bars were. They you don't really ever find out that they're plastic till the end. You just see Scott Speedman fucking Brad Pitting this shit and just eating it every time you see him. And then another guy gets a hold of it, and then just, as you said in the text, he's fucking David. He's fucking Brundlefly, like, throwing up that shit and stuff like that. I just didn't. I understood that it's plastic and it's very toxic, but it's never that's another part of the film that just isn't very well put together, very well explained. And you learn about it's plastic. I'm like, I guess that's why the kid eats plastic. I don't fucking know. Like that stuff is so convoluted to me.
That's another thing that was put out there. And they should have just not explained it if they're going to go the route they went. But no, they tried to give it some explanation, but they didn't give it enough. Apparently, Scott Speedman's character modified himself to where he could eat plastic for whatever reason. He did an actual modification. And then he has like this group cult. I don't know what these people he's with, this not an organization. It's like a cult. And they all have modified themselves to eat this plastic. You could take from that plastic's terrible for the environment, and it never biodegrades and blah blah blah. So this is a way that we can, that's what we're going to end up having to like consume what we've put out there ourselves, and it's poisonous to us and blah blah blah. But he does that to himself. He has a son, and his son is born with this ability naturally to consume plastic. Okay, so that doesn't make any fucking sense, because yes, you can pass things on to your children, but not something that you might. If I pierce my ear, my kid's not going to come out with a pierced ear. If I have a pacemaker,
David Cronenberg's X-Men.
Yeah, if I have a pacemaker, my kid doesn't pop out with a fucking pacemaker.
Yeah, right.
And I understand the movie is out there, and that's cool. And I would have just rather them leave it at that, but no, they tried to just barely explain that away and say, well, the reason the kid came out with it is because he modified himself, and then he had a kid. And I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't work that way. And they just left it there. I'm like, you should have just left that out and said, his kid came out like that, because it's about evolution and how we're evolving to that. And it could be saying, evolution is pushing us in a way to take back in what we put out there. The poison that we put out, we have to take back in, or, that's one thing you could take from it. I suppose it's partly what I took from it. Yeah, his kid comes out with this just natural ability to digest and not just digest, but like eat, like super easy, no effort, break off. So I guess he's got like shark teeth or something, eat this plastic. And the mom, that's why she calls him the monster and all that. And that's the whole thing right there, is that he can do that. The government finds it out, gets Kristen Stewart's character to, I think I'm trying to, this is when I was really getting dozy, but she either tattooed the organs or moved them around or replaced them. So when they opened him up, and he because that was their whole thing, is they wanted to do this public autopsy so the world would see it's a natural, beautiful thing to do this, accept evolution, accept who you are, move on, blah, blah. But then they opened it up and it was like all like fake and didn't look right. And it was ugly. So it backfired on him. But that's because Kristen Stewart's character got a hold of the body first and switched them out, or did that something to it. I can't remember if she switched them out or she tattooed them. She made it ugly within that world. Yeah, like it was unnatural. It wasn't natural. Like he had been modified, so it was like anybody else. So it didn't have that effect. And of course, we find by the we'll get to the end. I don't want to. That's your part.
Well, no, I was gonna say I really like the I really like the technology in this. I love the fact that cameras are on like ring fingers and stuff like that. Yeah. The thing about this movie that has always been great about David Cronenberg is, like, once again, visceral experience, ideas of like not humanistic, creaturistic chairs that are living, breathing things. It's a really cool aesthetic. I think that chair that he sleeps in is really cool in a lot of respects to how it attaches itself. And I don't know if it's way from like sleep and stuff like that. But with that said, we can talk about the ending, because I don't want to go too much longer, but the ending of this film, sees everything just kind of come to a head, and he's having the whole chair thing is really interesting because he can't swallow or something. You have to explain that one to me. But
the chair's supposed to help him digest.
Is that what it is?
It's supposed. Well, that's what, once again.
That's
people,
what it's supposed to be.
This is what I took from it.
Yeah.
The chair, based on some of the things that were said in the movie, and that comes into play in the end, is supposed to help. Just like the bed moves his body according to his pain while he's asleep, because they do mention that some people, the only place they feel pain is while they're sleeping because the two are deeply ingrained. So while he's sleeping, it moves his body in a way so he shouldn't be feeling pain. The chair is supposed to move to help him digest food, and apparently throughout the movie we see him sitting in this weird organic animatronic armchair, and he's like while he's eating, so he's having issues, which ties into the end.
Yeah, it's as you were saying, this is a world that isn't getting sick or feeling pain, but I always felt like Viggo Mortensen's character was always sick, and he looks like a ninja sometimes in this movie, which I thought was kind of funny. But
looks like Obi-Wan.
Yeah, he always exactly
sick Obi-Wan.
in Leia Seydoux's Luke Skywalker or something. I don't. But so at the very end of this, he's having trouble eating, of course, like that. He can't swallow and all that good stuff. And they try, after Scott Speedman's character has been drilled to death and stuff like that. They have one of these plastic bars, and I guess they're going to try to see if it can help him swallow and eat. And it doesn't, which I'm perfectly all right with. I don't need an ending explained to me of exactly what's going on. It's all up into interpretation, but you can interpret to that, it killed him, or he was happy that he was able to swallow it down, that he's part of the next evolution. Like, where do you see the ending end up going? Like, do you feel like, what was your interpretation, I guess you could say?
Yeah, you can. That part is left somewhat ambiguous to where, like you said, either his pain stopped. Either his pain stopped because sweet release of death, or his pain stopped because, this is what I've been needing. I took it, and I think the movie pushes you in more of a direction, especially with his messages, that he's been having trouble. You're right. Everybody in the movie, there's no illness, there's no pain, and he seems like he's always sick and he's always in pain. Like everybody else is great, and he's just walking around. And it's because he's conforming, because he's very much on the government side. He's like, we need to go register these organs. He follows the rules. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but he's following the rules. He doesn't buck the system. He's on board with them. He even works with them, with the police and all that, or the vice, or whatever they call them. But he's constantly in pain because he's pushing against what's natural. He even calls these organs he's growing that he thinks have no discernible function, tumors, and they're unnatural. I took the ending as to when she finally says, I think it's time or whatever, that we try this, and she gives him the plastic bar and he eats it. And we saw earlier in the movie where if a person who doesn't have this modification eats it, they die violently. I don't know if that's totally how it works, but it's metaphors. And he eats it in the chair. Every time he sits in this eating chair and it's like massaging him, as soon as he eats it, it's like, yeah, and it stops. And he's just kind of like, because to me, what that meant was these organs, or at least some of them that he's been growing, is his body moving on, evolving in the way that the world that we have been, mistreating the plastics and other things too. I think it just uses plastic as its way into that. The world saying, okay, you've put this out there, you guys need to do something about it. So I'm going to evolve you so that you can take care of this junk you put out there. And the chair stops and says, okay, you're doing what you're supposed to do now. You no longer need help digesting your food. You don't need to be made comfortable. And he goes into kind of a state of bliss. No longer, he's not in pain anymore. He didn't feel sickly because he's doing what he's supposed to do. He's following the natural course of things. He stopped. It's about him conforming and not bucking the system, but he's been bucking the natural system the whole time. He is now conforming to what evolution wants him to do, to himself being what he should be, and just giving into that and finding out, okay, those organs, I guess, were there to digest plastic. I get on, logically does not make sense. That's why it's all metaphors and kind of out there. I mean, this part of it, I I didn't hate this ending. I just hated the movie.
It's like the least offensive part of the movie. That's the problem.
Yeah, it is the part that kind of ties a lot of stuff together. I will give the movie that. It did seem like the kind of movie that when it ended, it was going to leave it on such an ambiguous note that you were like, and it tied up most of it. Now, it may not, it's still fucking out there, but it did at least tie up, for the most part, the story it was telling. I'll give it that. It didn't David Lynch my ass and just have suddenly Viggo Mortensen walking through a desert or something. You're like, how we get here? Oh, credits. I mean, it gave you resolution. Now, there are some aspects of that resolution that are left open to interpretation, but I feel like they really, for me at least, they pushed you down the road of, yes, he finally accepted, the natural order of things, and he's, doing the right thing. He doesn't need the chair to digest. He's not sick anymore. He is on his road to enlightenment and happiness and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
That is how I took it.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same boat, but I mean, it's interesting when it comes to the idea of, because this movie could also be kind of a future look into where we're headed, in a sense, where we're getting to the point where human organs can be grown, and the idea that they're trying to find a way for pain receptors and stuff like that, and just the modifications of like the way human. I mean, we're honestly in the next 50 to 100 years going to be robots, basically, like not robots, but like Cyberpunk 2077, where we're going to have modifications and stuff like that. And I see a lot of that in here too. I mean, yeah, it's doing a lot of what you're saying as well, but I also see a lot of it, where we're headed, how that world's going to work. And it's always a very weird, strange feeling to think about when you think about how the future. I mean, hell, you look at 100 years ago, or not even 100 years ago. You look 30 years ago compared to now, and the ideas of the way technology works. I always look, when I go into movies like this, I always look at like a technology aspect, because that type of thing, and just how we're starting to kind of conform into different ways of being, and different ways, like how do we experiment upon ourselves to make ourselves more, because everybody wants, I don't know if I want to live forever, but a lot of people want to live forever. And these are kind of, a little bit metaphors and stuff like that I see in the movie as well. Because, the thing about pain is you don't want to have pain, but you want to, if we know anything about, sexual desires, a lot of it is painful if you think about it. And there's the scene with Leia Seydoux, who is stark naked on a bed, and she's being cut open, and she's like fucking having the greatest time of her life. And we see see how exactly that's actually a good point.
This movie is very much somewhat Crash, David Cronenberg, but not even. I mean, I would say he's not even on it as much as he is there. Crash, I think, was better. I don't love Crash, but I mean, I like aspects of Crash. It just, I appreciate what the movie was trying to say, and I appreciate when a movie has a message, but I can't even say the message was subtle. The message was just not well conveyed. I don't think this was a subtle message. People may not be able to understand that said message, or messages actually, but it's not that they were trying to be subtle. It's just that they're so fucking obscure, and they lost their way so much that it's difficult to understand for no reason but to be difficult, to be obscure. It's obscurity for obscurity's sake. And what the fuck is that about? Why? There's no point to it.
That's my main issue with That's my main issue, like with like Mulholland Drive, or Twin Peaks.
Hallelujah.
Yeah,
almost anything with David Lynch. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not the biggest David Lynch fan. He's got some that I really like. Fair enough. Blue Velvet, the shit. But Mulholland Drive and Lost Highway. I fucking hate Lost Highway. But anyway, you'll get me on a tangent when we talk about David Lynch.
No,
and it's not because I don't understand them all, but
But I think in the end, I still think this is not the worst David Cronenberg movie I've ever seen. That definitely goes to Maps of the Stars or Cosmopolis, but
I haven't seen Maps of the Stars, but I've seen Cosmopolis. And
but I mean, in the end, to kind of like close this out, I think this is a movie that's very ambitious. It has a lot to say. It is very David Cronenbergian and stuff like that. But I'm with you. It's boring. It's slow. It doesn't really serve a purpose a lot of times. And I don't care if I get lambasted in this review for it. That's what I truly believe, and I know you believe as well. It's just David Cronenberg is a much better director than what he presented here. And if you like this movie, amen, that's perfectly all right. But I hope his next movie, which I know he's shooting right now, I hope it's much better than this, because it's especially with this cast. This cast has Léa Seydoux, Kristen Stewart, fucking Viggo Mortensen. They're all fantastic actors, and it just feels like they were fed some nonsensical weird wine or something like that from David Cronenberg. So that's kind of where
it was just weird for weird's sake at times. And I love weird. I mean, I mentioned Brazil a while ago. I fucking love Brazil. Some of David Cronenberg's earlier films, I love them. And this was very, at times, in some of its aspects, it had very David Cronenbergian things going on in it. Like, it's very distinct. You're like, yep, this is a David Cronenberg flick. What he did in some of his other films was he had all that stuff, but he was also able to, and there's always, all his movies have obscurities in them and out there shit, but he was able to still convey the story and the message in that story to you in a way that, you know, while afterwards there's tons of things to sit there and talk about and be like, well, what did you think of this? What did you think of that? Lots of things left open to interpretation. You still understood what was going on. And most importantly, even though I did understand what was going on in this movie, it was difficult at times, but most importantly, his other films aren't boring. That is my biggest complaint about this movie. Not how out there it is, not how it doesn't really convey its messages and its story very well, but because it is so fucking boring. And that is, I don't give a shit how artistic you're being. You ain't got to be boring. And I don't mean, and you had mentioned a moment ago, you said slow. There's slow and there's slow burn. A slow burn is still interesting. It's just a slower paced movie. It's just a movie that takes its time, but it's still interesting, intriguing. This is just fucking slow and fucking boring. And that's not why I go to the movies, at least. I have a feeling that that's not why most people go to the movies, is to be bored out of their fucking minds. If you do, good on you. This is your movie. But most people don't, and I am one of those people. I see way too many movies to waste my time with some boring ass shit. And that's unfortunately what this was for me.
Amen on that. So with that said, I still love David Cronenberg. I still think he's one of the great directors of a generation, and it's just a misstep for him, unfortunately. I like I said, he has another film coming out in the next year or two. We'll see how that performs. But once again, if you love this film, amen to you. So but anyways, I think that'll do it. We've been talking long enough on this very boring film. So
sure.
Jacob, once again, as always, I talk to you more than I'd probably talk to any person outside of my parents. Thank you for coming on. It's been awesome.
Sure, no problem.
Hopefully we'll find a film one of these days that's actually pretty good and not fucking killing us. But anyways, as I always say in the podcast as well as here, where can they find your content if they want to reach out and open you up with a zipper or something like that?
We didn't even talk about that, but anyway, less is better here. You can find me at Jacob Anders Reviews on YouTube, which is also where, as of the recording of this, a few hours ago, I released my review of not Possessor, Crimes of the Future. And also I'm on Twitter just talking shit at redneville2.com, just at redneville2. But check me out on YouTube. Go over there and subscribe if you like it, and if not,
actually, I should ask you what was more stupid, this or the FMV you played the other night?
This. Definitely. Well, I mean, the FMV game I played the other night was stupid, but it was at least entertaining until that one part where I turned it off. But I mean, it was entertaining. This was just gonna get me started.
So anyways, thank you so much for listening to my review as well as the Spoiler Explains. Once again, you can reach me at Movie Emporium, which is on Twitter, YouTube, all that good stuff. But let me know in the comments below what you thought of this movie. What did you think overall? If you didn't like it, what did you think? If you liked it, let me know why you liked it, all that good stuff. Otherwise, if you like what you see on this channel, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell at the top to find out what's coming next. If you like this video, awesome. Hit that like button. And as always, we'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out.
Peace, love, chicken grease.